So free motion quilting is life-changing when you learn how to do that. So that's something that we're going to learn how to do right now, and you can sew along with me if you like. So I'm going to put together a little Christmas tree skirt, and this was a project that I did on my last video. So if you want to get more in depth on this and how you make the template and all of that, you can watch that last video. So here I'm just taking the freezer paper off of this wedge shape, and we're just going to quickly put this together in a sandwich together, and then you can see how that's done, and then we'll go ahead and set the machine up for machine quilting. And it's called free motion quilting. But such a huge skill to learn, such a big deal. So it's very simple, but it's such a great thing. It really will give you just like a whole new world of projects that you can do. So it's really worth taking a few minutes to at least watch this and just see if it's something that you want to do. So here I'm just putting these wedge shapes together, just sewing right sides together, and I've cut 6 wedges out. We're gonna sew these together. So I'm just sewing like 3 of them together, which is like half of this mini tree skirt. And I'm just showing you this freezer paper. It's got a paper side and kind of a little waxy side. So you want to draw on the paper side and iron it with the waxy side towards the fabric. And you can do it towards the right side of the fabric or the wrong side, doesn't matter. So we're just assembling more of these wedges, but you can definitely, the first project I did was straight line quilting, so you can always do just quilting straight lines on a project, but in this video, in this tutorial, we're going to learn how to do that free motion quilting. So you can do curvy shapes, you can basically quilt, you can quilt snowflakes, you can do whatever you want. So it's such a freeing thing, and honestly I find it very therapeutic. Like if I have a quilt sandwich and I can just sit and I can, you know, quilt whatever I want on that piece, it's just very calming and, you know, a really nice thing to do. So typically as a quilter I have projects like that are half, you know, they're in different states of being finished. So once you learn how to free motion quilt, you're ready to kind of finish a whole bunch of projects. So here I've just put together those 6 wedges and left one side open. And that gives us a nice little tree skirt shape. And here I'm just going to put that onto batting. And with this tree skirt, we just want to spread it out a little bit more than the way that it would naturally lay, so we can get that nice slit in there. Otherwise it wants to lay on top of each other, those edges, but we need to spread that out a little bit. So that's what I'm showing you here. So we're going to do that on the batting first, and then we're going to add the back fabric to it. So the back fabric, you just want it facing down so that the yucky side is towards the batting. Now here I'm showing you a walking foot, which is that boxy foot, and that's not the foot that you want, but a lot of times people will get that confused with a free motion foot. So this boxy looking one is a quilting foot, but it's not the free motion foot, and that's what this is. It can also be called a darning foot, but it has, like mine is a small round shape on the bottom, but it definitely has that big spring to it. So there are other feet available that don't have a spring on it, but I have never used those feet, and I'm not sure how that would work. So I would probably go with one that looks more like the one that I'm showing you. So sewing machine feet can be universal feet. So some machines will take something called a universal foot. Mine is a brother, so I tend to buy things specifically for my machine. And I can get away with brother feet and universal feet, and it's also called a low shank, which is basically where that screw is. But other machines, like let's say a Bernina or something like that, you want to make sure that the foot will fit your specific machine. So you can Google that. You can a lot of times order them right from the manufacturer of your machine, but you want to make sure that it fits properly. So that's kind of the number one thing. Now, I looked on Amazon, and a lot of these feet are under $10, which is amazing. They even sell my brother foot under $10. So that is a great price. So here I'm showing you the back of the machine, and this is kind of the second step. So first we want to put on that free motion foot, and then second, if you have a switch where you can turn your feed dogs off, you just want to flip that switch. Some machines will also have a cover, so you can cover those feed dogs, and that's just those little things on the bottom that advance the material. If you can't do anything to your feed dogs, don't worry about it. It will most likely work anyway. So a lot of times I'm free motion quilting and I'm forgetting to lower my feed dogs. It still works perfectly fine, so don't be discouraged if you can't lower your feed dogs. So now I'm just tracing out a meandering pattern, and this is kind of the classic machine quilting, free motion machine quilting pattern. It's just a pattern that doesn't cross over itself. So that's what we're going to be doing today. And you can do it large, you can do it medium, and you can do it small. So if you're very new at this, just do whatever feels comfortable. But I would encourage you to draw it out a couple times just for practice. So this has nothing to do with what you actually do on your quilt top, but just it gets kind of that motion in your mind. So here we're just going to go right to this quilt sandwich, and I have the top, the batting, and the back of it is face down. So here I'm just bringing that thread. I just took like one crank, hand crank, and that brings my bobbin thread up to the top. And basically I'm just doing that so it doesn't make like a thread nest on the back. And now here I just start. So you put your hands like I have mine, you kind of position it that way, and that just helps you to be able to move your piece. So anything that you're doing to move that piece is the only motion that's happening. So if you just didn't touch it, then it's just going to sew in place. So that's why it's kind of now up to you to be moving your quilt top. So this kind of feels different. You just have to get used to it for a minute or two, and then you will completely have it down. So I just make sure that I'm not kind of quilting bubbles or tucks in here, or nothing's folded back. And I generally will try to quilt probably like 2 sections at a time. Or if I'm doing a quilt block, I might just kind of focus on one block at a time. But that way you make sure you fill this space. Otherwise, I kind of go off and I'm all over the place. And so I kind of have to be more disciplined to finish the section that I'm in. Or like in this case, I'm doing like 2 sections at a time. And that way I'm just sure that I fill it up. And you do want to quilt eventually like up to the edge a bit. You don't have to go crazy and kind of like hit that entire edge or anything, but you just want to make sure that you're quilting out towards that edge. So you can see I'm just kind of doing that meandering shape where things, generally speaking, don't cross over each other. But like, let's say you felt more comfortable like sewing loops or something like that. Just go ahead and do it. Just pick a pattern and you can just keep doing it. So it is a thing where you pick like a pattern and then you do it repetitively. But I've seen even stencils with this meandering pattern. You could buy one of those and like put chalk through it and then just do that initially, and then that would help you kind of get this shape down. But I do find like drawing that on just a piece of paper a few times will get it in your head like the way that you want your pattern to be, and it just really helps. So now you see we're coming to both an edge and kind of that open area, and I just want to make sure that I quilt up to it and that I don't actually fold it over or like quilt a wrinkle into it or a bubble or something like that. So I'm just basically slowing down, and then I just make sure that I've got that tight, and that helps. And see, you can quilt right like the area where there's just batting, there's no quilt top. You can quilt that whole area. It just helps when you need to cross over areas. So don't feel like, you can't go into these other areas. You definitely can. And see how I'm just crossing over that. And I just want to make sure I don't like quilt a tuck into that. or where it's flipped back. So you're controlling the motion, you're controlling the speed. And they do sell machine quilting gloves, which I do tend to use. But they have like grippy surfaces on them, so it just makes it a whole lot easier to kind of control this whole motion that's going on. So I can definitely recommend those gloves. Because honestly, you can quilt a lot faster with them. You can just have a lot more control over that quilt top. So I do this process, like I will quilt a bed quilt on my little machine here. I just, like I said, I take a block at a time or 2 blocks at a time, or I might do like a border area all at once. And then I might get up, take a break, do whatever. So it's really a fun process. And I'll tell you, when you have a quilt put together and then you go ahead and quilt the whole thing, it is such a satisfying thing to be able to finish a quilt. Now you have to do the binding after that, but and by the way, for this project, the binding, that whole like finishing off the edges, that is all in detail on the last project that I've done. If you want to actually do something with this little tree skirt, it will show you step by step how to do that. But this is basically the whole process. And once you finish those different areas, then you're done. But I just saw a movie where they had this beautiful, like pink quilted pillow, huge poofy pillow, and then a matching pink quilt, and it was all quilted with this meandering quilting. And I thought, oh my gosh, that is so beautiful. So it's just such a great skill to learn. And I feel like this looks really good, but I will tell you, it looks a whole lot better when you get the binding strip on. It's so beautiful. So the key to all of this is getting that special foot and putting that on. So I hope that you've learned something here and it gives you the confidence to go ahead and get that kind of foot and to be able to free motion quilt your own projects. It is just so much fun and so like almost freeing to have that skill. So thank you so much for watching. Hope that you've enjoyed sewing along, and I'm really hoping that you have a wonderful Christmas.